summer is over. Our Summer Lovin series is also over, and I am recapping with you today what I have learned by taking a bit of a break on the podcast front over the summer, and I cannot wait to share it with you. Let's do this, friend. Hey there, pitches. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Go Pitch Yourself. I'm your host, Angie Trueblood, and I am so stinking excited to be back on the mic with you. Now, if you are new here, welcome. I am the founder of the Podwize Group, a podcast interview booking agency, and over the summer, we actually replayed 5 of our most popular episodes. So if this is the first one that you're listening to, you are in luck. Go back and listen to the last 5, and you will get a really good sense of who we are and how we serve our podcast listeners. I'm excited to say that I took some time this summer to really think about the podcast, the direction that I wanted us to go in. And I think I am more pumped than ever to be delivering new content to you. And I'm really excited about the direction that we're headed in. If you are an OG listener, I hope you were able to take something away from the Summer Lovin series, maybe something in one of the episodes that you never picked up on before. And as always, I appreciate you being here. Now, like I mentioned, we are going to go over really kind of a recap of some of the things I saw in the podcasting space this summer, some of the ahas that I had. You'll get a little bit of an inkling in this episode of some of the topics that we are going to tackle in the coming months. And I'm just happy to be back in your earbuds or AirPods or whatever it is that you're listening to me with. As always, we have our podcast Love of the Week segment, though, where I like to share a podcast typically that myself or one of our clients have guested on, or one that I think you just should be listening to, or both, right? This week's podcast Love of the Week is my new friend, David Newman's podcast, The Selling Show. So I was a guest on David's podcast back on July 20th. We recorded over the summer. Spoiler, yes, people do record interviews and release them on the summer. And the title of the episode was Podcasting for Sales. And funny, I was just looking back to see the date that the show released so that I could share it with you. Again, July 20th. And I noticed that many of his more recent episodes had our clients or people that I connected him with as guests. So make sure you not only listen to my episode, but check out his interviews with Matt Phillips, Dan Pontefract, and Jessica Lackey. I think you will really enjoy the content there. Now, I love his show because he really is tackling selling, which if you struggle with pitching yourself to be a guest on people's shows, likely there is some hesitation that you might have when you are in what you view as a selling situation. And so I think the content that David is delivering is going to be really helpful and super complementary to the work that we do here. But I loved the conversation. He and I totally connected. I think we really just respected and appreciated each other. And you can hear that in the interview for sure. The coolest part, though, is at the end of the interview, after you stop recording and we were just kind of catching up and getting to know each other a little bit better, is when some of the magic happened. So a lot of times people ask, like, how do I keep the relationship with the host going? Like, how do I uncover possible collaborations? And my answer always is, it really just depends. And it includes typically you opening that door with the host and asking, what is it that you need? So as he and I were talking, and I don't remember which one of us asked first, I think he might have alluded or shared the types of guests that he was looking for his show. And I obviously was like, oh, I think I actually have some clients that might fit the bill. I asked him, well, how can I help you? Are you looking to guest on shows? And he said he was. So I ended up pulling a couple of shows from our database that kind of fit the bill of who he was looking to guest on. And I emailed it to him and I sent him the name of the podcast, the host, the contact information, how to pitch. And he actually responded in turn and sent me a couple of names of folks whose shows I might be a good fit on. So not only do I want you to go over and listen to his episode, but I want you to take away just really an open-ended view of what could be possible as you are connecting with hosts and where those relationships might lead. So big plug here for David's show, The Selling Show. You can listen to it anywhere you listen to podcasts. And my episode specifically was on podcasting for sales. So I think that could be really helpful and offers kind of a different twist to what I normally talk about. All right. Are we ready to recap the summer and what I learned about myself, what I noticed in the podcasting space, and kind of some of the plans that we have for the future? So one thing I learned very early in the summer is that I, sadly, tend to overcomplicate things. It kind of was actually an interesting progression of how I decided to do this Summer Lovin' series. Initially, I just thought, I'm going to take a hiatus over the summer. We're not going to put out any content. And that just didn't sit well with me. I didn't like the idea of that. I thought it might be a slippery slope into not producing anything moving forward. So I ended up deciding with Steve, my editor, we'll just replay 5 of our most recent or our most popular episodes. And so I had the grandiose idea, per usual, to make sure that I updated the content of some of these shows. So like one of the episodes that we released was my interview with Nikki Rausch, which took place back in 2019. And actually the content is very evergreen, but if there were things that I wanted to update, I had the idea that I would do that. Well, quickly, I recognize that doesn't feel like giving myself much of a break if I'm looking to actually update the content that I had released. So I kind of had a moment in the middle where I was like, I can't do this. It's too much. I wanted to read to you the email that I sent to Steve and then his angelic response back to me. So first, let me read you my email to him. This was sent to Steve July 10th. I said, hey there. So recording new intros and outros for these replays are proving to be pretty challenging. Should we just pop them in the feed and you can edit out any crazy parts that no longer pertain or are relevant? I could create a generic intro and outro to put at the beginning and end of each for the Summer Lovin' series. What do you think about that? I'm just slammed with work and don't know how I will get to it. Would love to know your thoughts, Angie. So again, I was complicating the situation by thinking I was updating and needing to kind of script out a little bit of what would be like a 2023 update to some of these topics. Okay. So that's the first thing I learned about myself, is that I tend to overcomplicate things. The second thing I learned was after Steve responded back to me, I realized I just need to be given very direct instructions when I am tending to make things bigger than they need to be. Here was his lovely response back to me. Hi, Angie. It sounds like you're overthinking the intros. Could you do a one-liner about them that says something along the lines of, quote, here's another episode in our Summer Lovin' series of our past top downloaded episodes. This one is from blank and features a conversation with blank. In it, we talk about blank. I think this one has proved to be popular because of X and Y, which are still relevant because of blank. That was it. And then he explained to me why re-upping the previous original files just didn't make any sense. So he literally gave me a fill in the blank and I wrote back, oh my God, this is why I love you. I can do all of these today, right now. And I was able to do that. I think at that point I had 3 or 4 episodes, out of the 5. So this is obviously how I overwhelm myself. I was able to bang those out literally that day and get to him all the audio that he needed for the entire summer. So I would say if you are thinking about the idea of pitching yourself to be a guest, of starting your own podcast, think about how can you keep it simple, right? If it's something that has been on your to-do list for a long while and it's nagging at you, then maybe you need to uncomplicate what you are picturing it to be. And maybe you need to either have someone in your life or consult with someone like me or Steve to help give you very direct, concrete instructions on how to do the thing simply. It was actually a really solid takeaway for me, and I've really used it in different facets of my life since then, recognizing that, okay, what is the simplest way for me to do this to get it done, right? And we even have an episode from years ago on the value of B+ work, and here I am trying to do A++ work. So I would say, obviously, the summer is a really often unique time to be working. If you have kids at home, if you're traveling on vacation, anything that you're trying to get done in the summer, it tends to be a little bit more relaxed than the regular year. Cut yourself a break and see if there are takeaways from how the summer was for you that you can sort of translate and take into the fall and winter. Okay. All right. So that's really what I learned about me. I also, with those replays, did not see a huge decrease in downloads. So we definitely saw a dip in downloads when I looked at the numbers this summer compared to last summer, but it wasn't anything that was super alarming. And I do feel like as I look into the fall and start recording new content like this, I think we're going to see the numbers spike back up and go beyond what they were last fall. So that will be a to be determined, and I will report back to you. But I think, again, that goes to show you that, look, it's okay sometimes to take a break, and you can do it in a strategic way. You don't have to shut things down completely, but you can make changes that will give you a little bit more space and still serve your audience. As I am looking now, our downloads did decrease a little bit, but they did not plummet by any means. We still got a significant number of downloads over the summer. So I feel like that is a good takeaway, and it's good for me to recognize now for the future. All right, next thing. And this, I have always known this, but I would say the first couple of years in business, we noticed that over the summer, we booked our clients for far fewer interviews over the summer than we did in other times throughout the year. And that was not necessarily the case this summer. Like, our clients were still able to get booked on interviews, actually record interviews, and have the host release them over the summer. So we're not seeing that sort of like ebbing and flowing for podcasting that I feel like we've seen in years past. So that goes as also a tip for you. If you are the one doing the pitching or your team is doing the pitching, don't take the summer off. Don't take the winter off, right? Don't just think like it's Christmas and no one's working, so I'm not going to pitch. I mean, if you were taking it off to go on vacation, cool. But if you were working, don't make a conscious effort to not send pitches out or to not connect with hosts, because there are people who are still looking for guests in those times that we might perceive to be less busy. Hey, are you listening to this episode thinking, yeah, Angie, this all sounds great, but I don't have the time to do it myself? Guess what? You don't have to. The Podwize group is here to help. We offer 2 primary services to support our clients in landing and converting podcast interviews. Hop on over to our site, thepodwizegroup.com/services. Check out the ways that we can help you. And if one of them suits your fancy, schedule a time to connect, and we'll talk through whether or not it's a good fit. Okay, something I saw in the podcasting space this summer, we're going to have a whole future episode on, is more and more conversation around why are my guests not sharing their episodes? And I have a lot of thoughts on this, but I'm seeing it more and more that hosts are inviting guests on their show, expecting that guest's audience to help them grow their podcast. again, lots of thoughts because I do see the validity in that. I do see sometimes my downloads go up when I have a particular guest on who shares with their audience. But I, as a podcast host, do not think my growth of the show is resting on the shoulders of my guests. I also do have some tangible ideas of what you can do if you host your own show and you want your guests to be more likely to share the episode. I definitely have ideas on that. And interestingly, internally, we have shifted our concierge package. So that's our done for you service. We have shifted that to a year-long service, and we now create content and social media graphics and copy so that our clients, when they have interviews go live, sometimes the hosts don't even share that information with us. And a lot of times they definitely don't share content or graphics in a way that makes it easy for our clients to share the interviews. So we are doing that for them because I think that is part of the problem. Like if it's hard to share, I'm not going to share. So we're tackling that for our clients internally. But generally, it's this whole tone of like the guest owes them, which I get it. Like they should be sharing the episode. But if your growth strategy is based on your guest sharing it, you've got it all wrong. So that'll be a whole episode. I'm going to leave it at that for now. I would love to know your thoughts though. If you're listening to this and you're like, oh, I have things to say about this, connect with me on LinkedIn at Angie Trueblood, shoot me a DM and let me know your thoughts on it. And maybe I'll use it in a future episode. Okay. Something else I realized, I knew it, and I just want to share a glaring example. You know, we always talk about how guesting and connecting with hosts and networking, so not just seeing your guest interviews as an opportunity to get in front of new audiences, but also as a way to create an extension of your network. And you just never know the impact that network is going to have on you, your life, your business. So this summer, we were hiring for a new position for a podcast relations executive. So someone who would really take the reins of creating pitch lists for our clients, networking with the podcast hosts that we want to get them as a guest on. And so I had a really great candidate pool. I was super fortunate in that regard. And I was getting ready to start like the first round of interviews. And I had a friend on LinkedIn reach out to me. Hello, Annie Ruggles, if you're listening. Annie and I actually connected, probably a year and a half ago when I was a guest on her show, Too Legitimate to Quit. And we had a really good deep dive into Survivor and business. Anywho, she and I stayed in touch. We really connected well over the course of our interview and after. And she messaged me over the summer as I had closed applications for the position and said, "Are you still accepting applications? I have the perfect candidate." And I said, "Technically, no, but who is it? Like, tell me more, because if someone in my network, she knows my business, she knows me, and if she feels like it's the perfect candidate, maybe it is." And so she shared with me a little bit about the candidate, connected me with her, and that is who we ended up hiring, Britt Phillips. She's our newest team member. Super pumped to have her. She comes with experience, a wealth of ideas and excitement, and it just goes to show you that you don't know where these interviews are going to take you. You don't know the impact that some of these relationships are going to have in your life and in your business. And that's why sometimes it's really hard to calculate like the ROI as soon as an episode goes live, because I would say, you know, based on Annie referring our next new hire to us, my time with her on her podcast was invaluable, right? It's probably then one of the most impactful interviews I have had, because literally it has the opportunity to shift the course of our business growth, which is huge. So hang in there. Even if you're seeing some of your episodes go live and you might not see like a huge influx of impact the day of, the week of, keep in touch with that host, keep nurturing that relationship, and just be open to the possibilities. Okay, two more things. So one thing that was fun this summer that we have started doing is we have started white labeling some of our pitching services. So I have always connected and networked with podcast production companies because it's kind of a natural fit, right? Their clients who host podcasts likely could benefit by guesting on shows. Well, I connected with an owner. She and I really hit it off, and she had clients that needed to guest on different shows. So they create and produce more corporate podcasts for bigger companies, but they contract with those companies and really want to highlight some of the company executives on other people's podcasts to develop their thought leadership and to increase the visibility of the company. And so we have taken that on as sort of a extra offering, and we love it. It has been fun. It's been really rewarding because the way that we're working our contract out with some of these companies is that we are guaranteeing some of the interviews. So it's kind of nice to say like, oh, we have to get these interviews booked by this date. So it's just like a different sort of cadence that we're working with. And it's been challenging, right? So there are things that we are learning as we navigate this in the business. And that will also be another upcoming episode, some of the things that we've learned and taken away. So I think some of those will definitely benefit you. Okay, the last thing I wanted to share with you is over the summer, I really thought and brainstormed and reached out to people in my network about the idea of changing the name of this podcast. Interestingly, when I launched Go Pitch Yourself back in 2019, it was because I knew we were launching a course to teach people how to pitch. And obvi, Go Pitch Yourself is like the most genius title to attract that type of audience, right? Well, we have since closed down the course and we have since closed down the membership where we teach others to pitch themselves. So I thought, well, maybe we need to change the title of the podcast to better reflect that we are helping people who want to use a podcast and podcast guesting opportunities to grow their business, and that they can get the help pitching from us, right? So I brainstormed so much. We were on our way to the beach and I had my own like internal brainstorming session in the car. I came up with all kinds of names, vetted them through friends and colleagues. The one that I thought about the most was around the phrase like mic drop. And then I'm like, well, that's really hard to spell. And there's a ton of shows just generally called mic drop. So I decided I'm not changing the name, at least not now, because I was never able to come up with a show name that I love as much as Go Pitch Yourself. Like, that's a hard act to follow, right? But I did love having this space to think about, well, what is this podcast really about? Like, who are we committed to serving and what could it evolve into? So right now, Go Pitch Yourself is a podcast for business owners and C-suite executives who are in a corporate setting to get the most relevant information on how to use a podcast and podcast guesting opportunities to grow their business. And you might be listening thinking, well, I don't really need insight into podcast hosting. I primarily want to leverage podcast guesting. But here's the thing. Knowing the inside scoop on what's going on in the world of a podcast host only makes you a better and more relevant guest. So even if we have episodes that are talking about growing your podcast or something that's really specific to what a podcast host needs, I encourage you to listen with an ear for, how can this make me a better guest? So you're not going to see a really big shift in the focus of the content, but it is going to be a bit more focused on, okay, once you've landed an opportunity, what can you do with it? How can you connect with hosts beyond the interview? What is changing in the podcasting space, right? So those types of conversations is really what we've been doing for the last 6 months, but we're going to lean into that even more over the coming months, which I'm super excited about. Okay. I hope this was fun for you. It was kind of cathartic for me, really, to deep dive on what the summer entailed, what I learned, things that just made me go, that I might want to follow up on in an upcoming episode. I would love any feedback from you. If anything that I said sparked an idea of like, ooh, I want an episode on that, or I have thoughts on that, definitely connect with me on LinkedIn. Again, it's at Angie Trueblood. Shoot me a DM and we can chat there. And if you're excited for me to be back live with new content, I would so appreciate if you would share this episode with a friend. Either shoot it to them in a text, an email, a LinkedIn message, however you do that. But your sharing this podcast is the best way for us to be able to reach new listeners and to impact more people who are out there sharing their voice. Okay, friend, I so appreciate you. And until next time, be well and be visible. Thanks so much for listening to this episode of Go Pitch Yourself. If you found this episode to be helpful, friend, you would be blown away by what we can accomplish together. Here are 2 next best steps. 1, be sure to sign up for our bi-weekly newsletter. That is twice a month, if that term confuses you as much as it does me. Each week that our episodes drop, I send an action-focused email, including an insider tip of the week based on the work that we do behind the scenes in our clients' business. For example, a recent tip of the week included how to estimate how large a podcast audience is. To get access to this exclusive content, pop on over to thepodwisegroup.com/pitches and sign up. As a special thank you, you'll get your first insider tip of the week as access to 6 pitches my team and I have sent that were accepted, including the core components of any great pitch. Number 2, schedule a call with me to figure out which of our services, if any, would be a good fit for you. We have a variety of ways to support you and your team in helping grow your business through podcast guesting, and I am pretty skilled at helping identify pain points and solutions. Hop over to thepodwisegroup.com/services and grab a spot on my calendar at the bottom of the page.